Okay, it looks like we're good to go. Welcome everyone to certification and LEUs. It's 10 o'clock. We're going to get started here because we have just a lot to cover today. Before we get into the substance of today's program, I just want to give two thanks. First to Sylvia Watson, who is our general counsel here at the Indiana State Library. Sylvia is going to be answering questions in the chat and monitoring that today. So thank you, Sylvia. She will jump in if there's any questions that she wants me to address out loud. And hopefully she'll let me know if I say anything that's just egregiously wrong, and she'll go ahead and jump in as well. I also want to thank Lisa Meadows from our MIS department here at the State Library, who is providing technical support and also assisted me getting set up this morning. So thank you very much, Lisa, for your help. And if we have any global sound or video issues, Lisa will announce those to everyone. This program is going to be recorded and posted, and it should run exactly an hour where we have so much material. So I'm going to run up against that hour-long time frame. The program is eligible for one LEU. As the person who approves LEUs, I have approved it. So you will receive your certificate through email from me in the next couple days once I figure out how that process works, but we will get that to you. My name is Rose Shingledecker. I'm the certification program director here at the Indiana State Library, and I started in February of 2023, so exactly 4 months ago today. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind, but some of the things that I do are process applications for certification. I review and approve LEUs. I process renewals. I answer questions. If you email certification@library.in.gov, you are emailing me and I will get back to you as soon as possible. So I basically live and breathe everything that we're going to talk about today. So let's go ahead and get into it. Here we have our agenda and learning objectives. I am going to approach this topic as though you know nothing about certification, and then I will build from the ground up. My goal today is not to make you an expert in certification. That's my job. So we're not trying to create experts, but I do want you to understand the basic outlines of the certification program and how it works. And I want to make sure that you understand your obligations as a library professional. I will try to clear up some common misconceptions as we go through the material and also point you to resources and tools for certification. So there are a lot of resources available, and I'll point you to those as well throughout. All right, so where does the certification program come from? The main takeaway from this slide is that the Indiana Library and Historical Board is the body that creates the certification rules. And the rules live primarily in the Indiana Administrative Code. I don't expect you to go and read it. It's about 11 pages of rules, and it's written in a little bit of a legalistic way. But that's where the program rules are created and where they live. The rules are periodically updated, and as many of you probably know, the most recent rule changes became effective January 1st of 2023. So we're about 6 months into the new program. These rules didn't make any monumental changes, the most recent revisions, but I will point them out throughout the presentation. Anytime you see an asterisk or a star on a slide, that indicates that it's a change from the previous rules. Because certification is so rules-based, it might be helpful for some of you to understand the why behind the program. I know that is often helpful for me to just get a little bit of context. There are some policy goals that are trying to be accomplished through the program, and basically the Indiana Library and Historical Board is setting standards to help support the development of library professionals and also ensure the high standard of quality library service is delivered to the public in Indiana. Now, normally a resources page goes at the end of a presentation, but this is really important. If you take away nothing else from this presentation today, I want you to bookmark this website on your computer because it has a lot of valuable information about certification. The This is our home page, the certification of the page of the continuing education website. It has a lot of links to information and resources about certification. Importantly, on this home page here is the certification manual. It's about a 20-page manual, but it sets out in plain language the program. So instead of going to the administrative code, if you have a question about certification, you can always look at the manual, and chances are you're going to find your answer there. I refer to it all the time. There's also a 2-page quick summary, which has a couple charts for a quick at-a-glance look at the certification program. So that's something I would point out to you on that page. A couple other pages you might want to look at when you're on this site is the LEU policies. LEU policies discuss library education units, including what counts and how to document it. So if you have a question about how to document a program that you went to, check the LEU policies page. The Find Training page has a ton of links and resources to free LEUs that are available on a regular basis. Some of them are archived, some of them are upcoming programs. You can also check the calendar. Those are the Indiana State Library programs that are upcoming, and so that's a good place to look for professional development courses. And finally, on this page, you'll see a link to forms. The certification program has 3 forms that we use on a regular basis. The first is the application for certification. That's what you'll fill out when you actually apply for your certificate. We also have an application for LEU provider, and that is when your program, if you want to get it approved for LEUs, you'll fill that out. And finally, the Indiana Librarian Conference form, and if you attend a conference in Indiana or outside, a national or out-of-state conference, you'll use that form to document your attendance, especially if you don't receive a certificate that says how many LEUs you already received from that program. So be aware of this, bookmark it. It's a really great resource. Okay, getting certified. I'm going to jump into the nuts and bolts of this program here. There's a lot of information. There's going to be a lot of rules. Nothing I can do about that. I'm going to have to talk about those. There's going to be a few charts and a couple of examples to hopefully bring some of this information home to you. All right, so the first question, what are librarian certificates? Okay, certificates are your professional licensure for library professionals in the state of Indiana. And a certificate signals that you've met certain qualifications by way of academic training or experience. And what we're talking about when we're talking about librarian certificates is library science education, other academic education, and library experience, or some combination of those things. Librarian certificates are required of all professional positions in public libraries. And we'll talk about what that means in the next couple slides. All right, so what professional positions require certification? There are 3 classifications of professional library positions in Indiana. The first is director. Every director of a public library in Indiana needs to be certified under this program. Branch or department heads at libraries need to be certified. And then finally, the largest group, the final group, but it's the largest group here, is professional assistant. And that's any position in which the person spends more than 75% of their time doing professional library work. This is a change. In the prior rules, it was 50% of the time. So that's been bumped up now to 75% of the time. And what that means to me is that if your primary job is professional library work, you need to be certified. We all have other duties as assigned. That's normal in any job. But if what you're primarily doing is professional library work, then you need to be certified in Indiana. So what is professional library work? Professional library work isn't actually a phrase that appears in the administrative code. We have a couple longer phrases that appear on the slide that describe what professional library work is. It's a job that requires knowledge of professional library practices. development or management of collections and technical library processes, or the ability to deal with people in a professional capacity as distinguished from clerical. And we have some examples. The things that would be considered professional library work are cataloging, copy cataloging, reference, collection development, reader's advisory, children's, teens, or adult services. And the code does actually give us some classifications of positions. It's not limited to these things, but if you're a librarian, a paraprofessional librarian, a cataloger, a reference assistant, or a program coordinator, then you definitely need to be certified. The code specifically calls out those particular classifications. So again, if you're doing this type of work 75% of the time, that's your primary job, you need to be certified. And together, directors, branch and department heads, and then the professional assistants who are doing this work, primarily, those make up our professional library workforce in Indiana. And right now there are over 2,500 certified library professionals in the state. So I think yesterday when I looked, it was about 2,572 or something like that. So over 2,500. So there are a lot of you out there. Sometimes it's helpful to look at jobs that do not require certification, just to get a sense of what the difference between the jobs that do and jobs that don't. So if your job falls in one of the categories on this slide here, then certification is not required for you. All right. This is a common question that comes up to me. Often I'll reach out to someone if their certificate has expired, and they'll say, oh, well, I didn't renew my certificate because I went down to part-time. And they'll say, I didn't think I needed to be certified anymore. But if you are doing the same job that you were doing full-time and you've moved down to part-time, or you're just doing it part-time and it was always a part-time job, you would still be required to be certified. So certification is required based on your primary job duties. It's what you're doing when you're at the library, not how often you come into the library. So keep that in mind if you have part-time staff, but they're doing professional work. Okay. There are 7 different certificate levels in Indiana. It's a little different than some professions where maybe you apply and everyone just gets the same certificate if they meet the qualifications. Here we have different levels and we have different qualifications for each of those. All of them have some combination of library education or library experience or academic education. So they're all unique in what they require. And we'll see why there are so many in just a few slides, but I want to go ahead and just take a look at each of these. Oops, I jumped ahead. Okay, take a quick trick. The certificates 1, 2, and 3 all require a master's degree in library science. So if you go to library school and you've never worked a day in your life in a library, you're in for an experience. That's exciting, but you will be qualified as an LC3 by virtue of your formal academic training in library science. However, you're going to need some more experience if you're going to move up between levels. So there are no changes from the previous rules in the 1, 2, and 3 requirements. The LC4, 5, and 6 all require some combination of formal academic education and either library education or experience. So let's look at the LC4 because there is a change in the LC4 and 5 and the 6 too. The LC4 requires a bachelor's degree, and it also requires at least 15 credit hours of college level library science taken from an accredited college or university. That's the equivalent of 5 classes. They need to be 3 credit hour classes. This is a change from before because previously the 5 classes had to be from specific subject matter areas within the field of library science. Those specific subject area requirements have been removed. So you have a little bit more flexibility now when you're designing which 5 library courses you want to take to qualify for the LC4. You can tailor that a little bit more to maybe what your experience is or what your job is or what job you're hoping to have at the library. So that's a nice change, gives you a little bit more flexibility. Same change with the LC5. LC5 has always required 3 classes, but they no longer need to be from a certain subject matter. Okay. Okay, I see we have a question. I'm seeing it and I want to answer it right away here. Circulation was listed as exempt, and does that include the circulation department manager? And yes, the circulation department manager is not a job that would require certification. Okay, our last certificate is the LC7 certificate. This is a special certificate. It's only for certain directors of our smallest public libraries, those that serve a population of 3,000 folks or less. It's a special certificate. It requires a high school diploma. It requires 3 years of library experience. And also during those first 3 years, the director needs to take 10 hours of Indiana State Library sponsored administrative training. There are a couple of you throughout the state and a couple more who are just getting certified now, which is great. So have just applied and are getting ready to have their certificates become active. Okay, here is where the rubber meets the road. This is the slide that explains why we have so many different levels of certificates. And that's because depending on the library size and service area and what you're doing at the library, it will determine the minimum qualifications for the job. So to determine which certificate you need, you take a look at this chart, and on the left-hand side, you're going to find your library. Is it a class A, B, C, or C smaller than 3,000 or less? I have the link below where you can look at the service area statistics. Once you determine what size library you're in, you'll look across the top and see where your job falls. Are you a director, a branch or department head, or again, most folks are a professional assistant. So where those two things meet determines your minimum qualification for your current library job. Now, if you meet the qualifications that are higher than that, fantastic. I will certify you at the highest level that you are qualified for. But this is setting the minimum standards for these positions in these size public libraries throughout the state. Please note on this slide, I do want to note that in a Class C library that serves 3,000 or less, only the director needs to be certified. So branch department heads, if you have them at that size, or professional assistants do not need to be certified, okay? So that's a little bit of an exception to the rule, but directors everywhere have to be certified. All right, if your head is swimming, I understand, it's okay. It's a lot of charts, it's a lot of numbers. But there are always 3 factors at play whenever an application for certification comes across my desk. I'm always looking at the applicant, who they are, how much library experience and education they have. I'm also looking at what their job is. I sometimes get applications for folks who don't need to be certified. So I'm always reviewing the job description and what someone is telling me they are doing. And I'm also trying to figure out what the classification is. And then finally, where you're working. Every time I process an application, I look up the library and see what size it is, what their service population is, because that's going to determine the minimum certificate for everyone. So let's do a quick example just to see how this all plays out. So Marion, the librarian, of course, has recently started a job at a library and has submitted an application to me. And on that application, I see that she has a master's degree in history. She has taken 1 library science class, and she has 7 years of experience at public libraries, or any libraries really. It doesn't have to be a public library for your previous library experience. So it's great that she has a master's degree in history, but I'm certifying librarians, not historians. And so because her master's degree is not in library science, she's not eligible for the LC 1, 2, or 3. Now, she has a bachelor's degree in some college, but she hasn't taken enough library science credit for her to be eligible for the LC 4 or 5. However, by virtue of her experience working in libraries, Marian is eligible for an LC 6. All right. So we have an applicant who is qualified for the LC 6 and has represented on the application that their library population is around 29,000, which means it's a Class B library. And so when I look at the chart and I review the job description, which has been described as the primary duties of reference, readers advisory, and some adult programming, all of these things sound to me like professional library work. Okay, they would fall in that category. And so I'm thinking, okay, we have a professional assistant at a Class B library, and the minimum requirement for that is an LC 6. So it's a match. This is great. I'm going to go ahead and process Marian's application for certification. Okay. When does Marian apply? If Marian started her job today, she has a 6-month grace period before she has to become certified. So that means that on or before December 20th of 2023, she's going to need to apply for certification. Now, she can apply anytime though, because she already has met the qualifications and maybe she wants to fill it out as part of her new employee paperwork. Or maybe after she has been there for about a month, she has a meeting with her boss and her boss says, okay, it's time for you to go ahead and get your certification taken care of. So she can apply anytime in that 6-month period. And I will issue the certificate because she meets the qualifications. I'll issue the certificate right away. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but if you're getting a temporary permit, you can apply early, but I can't issue it to you until exactly 6 months after you started your job. So those will be post-dated if you send them in early. And again, we'll touch on that during temporary permits. Also, when you're moving up between levels, so let's say Marian has been working as her public service associate job. She's really enjoying it. She's decided to get a master's degree in library science in her free time. She's been taking classes and she gets that master's degree. Even though she's still in a job that just requires the LC 6, she can apply at any time for the LC 3 because she's now met the qualifications for that higher level of certificate. She'll send in another application, she'll send in another fee, and I'll review her materials and I'll say, okay, great, she's met the qualifications for the LC 3 and I'll issue it right away. So anytime you meet that higher level above your minimum qualifications, you can go ahead and apply for that. Okay, how to apply for a certificate. You're going to go to the certification webpage I pointed out earlier. You're going to fill out the application for certification of public librarian. Now, this is a 1-page sheet. So if you have extensive library experience, you may want to attach a sheet just to give me some more information, especially if it's required for the certificate you're applying for. For example, the LC1 requires quite a bit of professional library experience. And so sometimes applicants will just attach their resume so that I can see they've met the experience requirements for the LC1. Make sure to sign your application. That's a common thing that happens. If you forget to sign it, I will have to scan it and send it to you and ask you to sign it. If you forget, it's okay, but you'll get an email from me. So just before you send it, do a quick look over your application. Payments. The cost of a 5-year certificate is $50. Most people pay with a personal check or a money order. The State Board of Accounts does not allow a library to pay for a librarian's certification out of the general operating fund. So that is not allowed. However, if your library permits it and they may pay for a certification out of a general or unrestricted gift fund. If that is the case, if your library does that, I think it's not usually the norm, but if that's the case, then make sure to send a note, a written note with your application that says that this check was drawn from an unrestricted gift fund. Otherwise, you'll get an email from me asking for that information, because I am not allowed to deposit a check from a library until I confirm that it's not coming from the operating fund. You'll need to order your transcripts if transcripts are required, and I have a few slides about that. But those will come with your application, whether you send them with your application or they come to me separately, they'll get matched up when I review your application. And then you're going to mail it, because all initial applications have to be processed through the mail. We do not offer online application for certification. All right, as promised, when to send your transcripts. When you first apply, anyone who is applying for the LC 1, 2, or 3 only needs to send their transcript showing they have a master's degree in library science. I don't need to see your undergraduate transcripts. The MLS is sufficient to prove your academic credentials for those certificates. For the LC 4 and 5, you're probably going to need to send me multiple transcripts. And the reason for that is because I need to see the transcripts for your academic education. Both of those require at least some college or a bachelor's degree. And then I also need to see the transcript for your library science coursework. And usually that is done at somewhere different than you did your bachelor's or undergraduate or other college education. If it was done at the same place, I only need to see one transcript, but for the most part, people end up sending multiple transcripts to prove both of those things for the purpose of certification. Okay, when you don't need to send a transcript. Once you send a transcript, it becomes a part of your permanent file. So you do not need to send me transcripts every time you renew your certificate. If you've already shown that you have an MLS one time, you don't need to prove it again to us. We have that in your file. However, the exception to that is that if you have taken additional coursework that would make you eligible for a higher level of certificate than you currently have, then you do need to send a transcript when you make that application for the higher level. You do not need to send in a college transcript for the LC 6 or the LC 7. Neither of those require a college education or additional college credits. And we don't require you to send a transcript for high school education. However, please fill out the application thoroughly so that I can see what high school you attended, what type of completion you have, whether it's a diploma or GED, and then the date that that was completed. That will become part of your permanent record here. Okay. Transcripts, a note about transcripts. They have to be official. That means they come from the school to me, or they go to you, but they have never been opened and you send them to me. So there are 3 different ways that you can send an official transcript. You can send it via email, electronically. A lot of schools offer, most schools really offer the ability to request an official electronic transcript. You can send those to certification@library.in.gov. That is a change from before. If you look at the application for certification, it still says to send it to statewide services@library.in.gov. Either one of those is fine. If you send it to statewide services, Terry, who's sitting just on the other side of the door from this room, is a wonderful person. She'll print out your transcript and give it to me, or she'll forward it to me. So it will still get to me, but you can also send it directly to certification@library.in.gov. So you can make a request with your school to have that sent. You can also request that your school mail it to the office. That's fine too. If they don't offer an electronic option, or if you simply don't want to do that, you can have them mailed. You can also have them mailed to you, but be very, very careful when it's mailed to you not to open it. If you open a sealed transcript envelope and then send it to me, I cannot accept it as an official record of your education. So I will have to, unfortunately, contact you and say, hey, this envelope was open. I need you to resend your transcripts. All right, here's what happens a little bit behind the scenes. When your materials come to the certification program office, I'm going to create a record in the certification portal. That's our database as part of processing. You'll get an email from me and I will let you know that your certificate has been issued. If there's any problems with your application, anything missing, or I have questions about your job, maybe your job, the description of job duties, it's not clear to me whether certification is required or when it started, I'll contact you. But otherwise, you'll just get an email that says that your certificate has been issued. And that email will contain instructions for you to log into the certification portal. Okay, when you log into the certification portal for the first time, that's where you can go and download and print your certificate. So we don't mail out certificates anymore. I know that was done in the past, but now it's all done through the portal. Okay, here's a little preview of the certification portal. Things you can do on the portal. You can update your contact information once your record has been created. You can verify status, so you can look up your own certification or anyone else's certification on the portal. You can also renew. I know I saw a few chat questions about that. You can renew an existing certificate through the portal, which is really nice and convenient. So I do want to point out that there are some instructions at the bottom left corner of the homepage, and those will help guide you through using the portal. If you have any problems using the portal, please email me and I'll walk you through it. The most common thing is that the email address that you created, your portal record was created with, has now changed. Maybe you moved libraries and it was under your previous library, something like that, your previous library email. So I'll help you through those steps to update your email address so that you can get into the portal and do what you need to do there. Okay. 5-year certificates. 5-year certificates are issued and expire on a quarterly basis. That means that any certificates that I'm currently issuing right now, if I issue a certificate this afternoon on June 20th, it's going to expire June 30th of 2028. So all certificates are expiring on one of these 4 days in 5 years. Just something to know. Okay, let's look at another quick example so we can talk about temporary permits. This is Tammy, named after Tammy 2, everyone's favorite fictional Hoosier librarian from Parks and Rec. Tammy has just started a new library job, and it's at a Class A library. She described her primary responsibilities as children and teen programming, story time, reference desk, school outreach, and some shelving. Well, maybe we all have to do a little bit of shelving sometime in the library, but her primary job responsibilities sound to me like a professional library job. And she's a professional assistant in that case. And this job that she has just been, she's just started, requires an LC5. Tammy has a bachelor's degree, but has no library education or experience. And under that chart, that means that she currently isn't eligible for a librarian certificate. So what do we do? Does Tammy just wait around and start taking library classes until she is eligible eventually for a 5-year certificate? Well, unfortunately not. What Tammy needs to do is apply for a temporary permit. She's working in a professional job, and so she needs to get certified in some way. And until she meets the qualifications for that LC5, she's going to need to apply for a temporary permit. Temporary permits are for people working in those jobs who don't yet meet the certification requirements. Temporary permits last exactly 1 year. So if I issued her permit today, it would run until June 20th of 2024. She can renew her temporary permit twice for a maximum of 3 permits. And temporary permits, unlike the certificates, start exactly 6 months after you start the position that requires certification. So if Tammy sent in an application today and I see that she's not yet eligible for the LC5, I would go ahead and I would cash her a check because I'm required to deposit funds within 24 hours. I would enter all of her information into the database and create a file for her. But her temporary permit will show as pending until exactly 6 months after her application date. So until December 20th of 2023. If she applies late, let's say she does her 6-month review and her supervisor sees, oh, you haven't yet applied for certification. She sends in her application late. I get it in January. It's going to be backdated to exactly 6 months after she started her position. And the reason for this is because the temporary permit program is by design fairly rigid. It's designed to give everyone 3.5 years to meet the qualifications for certification for a 5-year certificate. The program is rigid so that everyone has the exact same amount of time. This is a policy choice by the Indiana Library and Historical Board that this is how long that people may work in a professional library job until they meet the certification requirements. So what does that mean? If you're a temporary permit applicant, please make a plan. Figure out what certificate you're going to need within 3.5 years and figure out a plan to work towards that. Do you need to take some library science classes? It may take you some time to get registered for those. You know, you're already working a full-time job. It can be hard to squeeze in some extra classes. And so you need to have a plan on how you're going to meet those requirements in 3.5 years, knowing that there's nothing I can do to extend the amount of time for you to complete those requirements. If you're a supervisor of someone on a temporary permit, please work with your staff member, make a plan. How are you going to do this? Make it part of their goals. Whatever you need to do to move it along. Just something to be aware of. Okay, how do you apply for a temporary permit? You're going to send in the application. Temporary permits are $10 for the 1 year, and you'll mail it into the Indiana State Library. Again, you can't apply online. You'll need to send it in through the mail. Okay. What happens if you don't get certified? Just keep in mind that certification is a requirement that applies to all public libraries and all professional positions in public libraries. And it is about maintaining standards. So your failure to get certified can reflect on your library's eligibility for certain services that are only available to libraries that meet Indiana library standards. Okay, what questions do we have? Sylvia, do we have questions I need to address out loud?
I've been answering them as we go, but we did just get a new one that says, does previous library volunteer hours count towards experience?
Ooh, that's a good question. I believe so. However, I want to check the manual for you. So I'll make a note that that's something I need to send out the answer, but I believe that the certification manual addresses that. And I believe the answer is yes, that volunteer time will count towards library experience, but let me check. Okay.
And somebody asked that, and I already kind of answered this. CEUs, do they count as LEUs? Are they interchangeable? And the way I answered it was, well, if it's a pre-approved provider and they give you a certificate that says CEUs, we would recognize that. But if just confirm for me that that's correct, that like if it's not an approved program or an approved provider, then that we wouldn't count those CEUs.
That's correct. So CEUs is a standard unit of professional development credit. I think usually one CEU equals 10 hours of instruction or something like that. So if you have a CEU certificate and the provider has already been approved to provide library education units, so they're an LEU approved provider, then yes, I can do the calculation to determine how many LEUs you should be awarded.
Aside from that, I've been keeping up with the questions. So
okay. Thank you so much, because I know I am just flying here. We have so much content. We're going to get as far as we can. So thanks, Sylvia. Keep them coming, and I will definitely answer your questions via email afterwards if we can't get to them today. So reach out to me if you have a question. I'm here to help you navigate this process because it can be a little confusing. All right, let's talk about staying certified. Now that you have your certificate or your permit, you're going to need to keep it in good standing. And a critical component of keeping your certificate in good standing is earning library education units. LEUs are our measure of continuing education. They're the continuing education for Indiana library professionals. LEUs, as far as I know, are unique to Indiana. So you won't see this acronym any other place that I'm aware of. Please correct me if I'm wrong, if you know of another state that uses these, but these are unique to Indiana library professionals, to my knowledge. And LEUs are earned from taking approved classes, and they establish your eligibility to renew your certificate. So that's why you're required to do them, to maintain a certificate or a permit that you already have. What is an LEU beyond that? It's exactly what we're doing right now. It's a professional development course presented by someone to give you information or skills that help you in your job as a library professional. So when you think about a conference or a workshop, going to hear someone speak on a topic that's relevant to your job as a library professional and helps you earn those skills, that's what we're talking about with LEUs. Trainings have to be at least 31 minutes long to qualify for one LEU. LEUs are awarded on an hour-for-hour basis, and they round up after 90 minutes to 2 LEUs. Okay, so that's how we do the qualification, or how we do the calculation, excuse me. They can cover a wide range of topics. But one of the, well, I'll talk about approval in just a second, but I know everyone wants to know right off the bat. Let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. How many do you need? Okay, it depends on your job classification for the most part. Directors need 100 in 5 years, branch and department heads need 75. Most of you professional assistants out there are going to need 50 LEUs in 5 years. You'll notice the reference to specialists. Specialists were certificates that were issued in the past, but we no longer issue certificates to specialists. Specialist certificates still exist. There are a few out there where people have been continuously maintaining them, but there are less than 20 specialists in the state. So if you are a specialist, you know you're a specialist. Otherwise, you probably fall in the classification of director, branch, or department head, or professional assistant. Temporary permit holders need to do 10 LEUs each year while they're on a temporary permit. And then you LC7 candidates out there, you have to complete the requirements for temporary permit holders, which is 10 LEUs, but also be doing your Indiana State Library sponsored administrative training each year. So your total requirement is actually 20 LEUs each year. All right, I see the question. Here it comes. Okay, I can almost hear the joy emanating from all the participants on this call today. So TLEUs are no longer required. TLEUs were tech LEUs. They were focused on computer and technology. They are no longer required. Even if when you applied for your certificate or you last renewed your certificate, you no longer need to be counting TLEUs. Any TLEUs you already earned are going to just count as regular LEUs towards your renewal, towards your minimum number required LEUs. So if you took them, that's great, fantastic. I think you probably are grateful that you have that information, but you no longer need to be searching out TLEUs to meet a minimum requirement of those. Woohoo, yay. Okay. Courses, LEU courses need to be pre-approved. They need to be approved, that's part of the definition, but what that means is pre-approved. And there's two ways that a course can be pre-approved. Either the course provider can appear on the Indiana State Library's approved training providers list, or if the provider isn't on that list, you can also apply for approval. Let's look at the approved training providers list. This should be everyone's best friend out there. It's sometimes called the blanket list. It is literally hundreds of providers long. So you can search that list if you're looking to take a webinar. You can start from the approved training providers list and look for a provider that sounds interesting and seek out their training. Or if you have found a webinar that you know you want to take, I strongly recommend that the first thing you do is go to the approved training provider list and search it. See if the provider of this webinar that you're interested in taking is already on the list. If they are, that means that their content has been approved for library education units. And as long as the program was at least 30 minutes long, you're going to get an LEU for attending that program. You're going to want to follow the LEU policies for documenting your attendance, especially if the provider doesn't give you a certificate. Not all of the approved training providers are going to provide you with a certificate or a compliance certificate for our program. So make sure to follow the LEU policies on how to document your attendance. Okay. If the webinar you're looking to take, you search the pre-approved provider list and it turns out that provider is not already approved, you're going to want to apply for approval so that you can get LEU credit. You're going to fill out an application. It's available on the certification website. Include the attachments that it requires, and that's going to be an agenda for the program. I need to know how long it is going to be so I know how many LEUs to award, and also some information about the presenter so that I can evaluate whether this is really quality content and whether the person who's presenting it is qualified to do that. And then you're going to submit it to me at least 30 days in advance. The earlier, the better. It really helps. I look at LEU applications about once a week, so it's not a daily task for me unless I'm swamped with them, but I review them on a regular basis, but the earlier, the better. The most important thing to remember is that if you attend the webinar and after the fact want to get LEU credit and the provider was not approved, don't submit an application after the fact, because I cannot approve the course for LEUs after it has already occurred. That's just a hard line we draw in the office. So I will not look at past programs and approve them. You must submit your application before the program happens.
Hey, Rose, we have a question about Niche Academy. Somebody's asking about blanket approval for Niche, and I kind of mentioned that, well, Niche is difficult because they have some original programming, but also libraries can upload their programming, which may or may not be approved for LEUs. So I can't remember. Niche apparently is not a blanket provider or on the approved list, correct?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Niche is a training platform, and their content that they've created is on the approved provider list.
Okay.
So that is approved. Content that your library uploads, so let's say your library hosts a program and they record it and they want to make it available to staff for years to come, If it was created in-house by your library, then that needs to be approved by application. So it's not a niche program. It may be hosted on the niche platform, but it's not approved unless it was approved by application. One of the biggest challenges with niche is that their certificates that they spit out at the end after you complete a program are not compliant currently with our requirements for LEU certificates, which I do have a slide on later. And so it may be that your library needs to issue you a compliant certificate if you take a niche course. It's approved, but I may need more information. Like often the niche certificates don't include how long the program was or how many LEUs. And so I don't even know when I get those, let's say you're renewing a temporary permit and you send a niche certificate in, if it doesn't say 1 LEU or 60 minutes, I don't know how many credits to give you. So that's the problem, the challenge with those certificates. And I have been working with some libraries on that issue. I know some have started to just issue regularly in-house certificates that are compliant. I hope that answers the question. Okay, there's a lot of places to find approved training. The training calendar I pointed out on our website, the Find Training page has a bunch of archived webinars. You can feel really confident that those are approved for LEUs. It has links to other approved trainings. Of course, you can always start your search for LEUs with the approved training provider list. And then I would just encourage you to hop on some Indiana Public Library listservs, because those listservs, I've seen webinars come across through those pretty frequently. All right, I do want to point out a few different ways that are not your traditional webinar, seminar, conference, training class, where you can earn LEUs. However, the caveat with this is that limits apply. When you go to the LEU policies page, you'll see each of these, what I'm calling non-traditional LEU options will be listed on there, and they will have some information under each one of those about what the limits are and how to document your attendance at these. I don't want to go too in depth on this, but I will go ahead and talk about them briefly. Non-library related subjects, you can get some credit for programs that are important to, but not related to library programming, not directly related to. And some examples that the manual give are some wellness, so those types of courses, or foreign languages. You can develop and deliver an LEU program and get credit for that. You can work on an external professional library committee. It has to be library related, library organization, but you can get credit for that work. You can publish an article. It has to be in a peer-reviewed journal. It has to be at least 2 pages long, but you can get credit for that. Attending professional roundtables, you can get LEU credit for that. Please note that that is only available to 5-year certificate holders, so it is not available to temporary permit holders. But you can get credit for those. And then finally, the new category that was recently added is escorted library tours. So again, go to the LEU policy page if you're interested in these and want to understand how to get your credit for this. So you keep track of your LEU progress. We do not. So what I recommend to people is that you just create a folder. That every time you finish an LEU, you just drop your certificate in that folder. Maybe you make a hash mark on the front that shows, so that you can keep a running tally of how many you have. When you go to a conference, save your supporting documentation. That's going to be your registration. It's also going to be the conference program, or a printout or a download of the conference program. Attach that to your conference form. Drop it in your folder. So just make sure that you're keeping all the information, and don't rely on us, because we're not doing that. With 2,500 librarians, we don't have the filing space for all those LEU certificates here. All right, a note about compliant LEU certificates. I mentioned this earlier. There are 6 things I'm looking for on every LEU certificate. And the reason for this is because this is all information I need to be able to tell whether or not a program was actually approved and that you took it in the appropriate time frame, and how many credits I should give you for it. So all of these things are required for a reason. It's because I need them to be able to tell what program you attended. Take a look at your certificate. If it doesn't match, talk to your if it doesn't have all these things, talk to your supervisor, see if you can get an in-house certificate issued that has all the qualifications. Many certificates do have them, but some don't. And so just keep an eye on that. All right, let's talk about renewals. I know we have just a few more minutes left. I'm going to try to get through this to answer so that we can touch on this. I'm going to start backwards. I renew temporary permits most frequently because they're expiring on a regular basis all throughout the year. So when you go to renew a temporary permit, you need to send in an application. You do send in proof of your 10 LEUs. In that case, you do send your 10 certificates. Make copies for me and send them in. You also need to include a statement of progress towards meeting your 5-year goals. That's so that I can just review and see that you're actually moving towards those 5-year certificate requirements, and we're not getting caught in a situation where at the end of 3.5 years, you haven't met your requirements. And then finally, you do have to renew a temporary permit through the mail. You can't do it online right now. We don't have a process for that. And again, that's because I'm reviewing these things to make sure that you're eligible to renew your permit. There is a new change. Currently, previously, you could only count LEUs that were earned when your temporary permit was in effect. However, the new rules will look back to the day you started your position. So that will allow for you to count LEUs that you earned during that initial training period. Pretty common for people to be earning LEUs while they're first ramping up and learning about the job. And so this change to the rules allows us to capture those LEUs and count them for your permit renewal. So if you're hired today, your permit doesn't start for 6 months exactly until December, but anything you earn from today until December will count for your LEUs for a permit renewal, for your first permit. Permits 2 and 3, those are limited. The LEUs you earn are limited to just that 1-year period. LC7 directors, you need to meet the requirements for temporary permits and also your 10 admin LEUs. And because of time, I'm going to skip over this slide, but it will be in the slides that go out to you. And then finally, we already saw the rules for 5-year certificate holders. These are your requirements to renew your 5-year certificate. Again, a recent change to the rules is that any LEUs earned in that first 6 months, even if you didn't apply for your certificate right away, you can still count your LEUs that you earned in that time frame for your first 5-year renewal. So for your first certificate, you get the benefit of your initial training period. Okay. Much like certificates are issued on a quarterly schedule and expire on a quarterly schedule, the quarterly schedule is what determines when you need to renew your certificate. So right now, I am renewing certificates that expire June 30th. After July 1st, if you renew your certificate, then if your certificate expires September 30th, you can start renewing it after July 1st. And the last thing I want to say about renewals is that you have 2 options to renew your 5-year certificate. You can renew it online. This is great. This is really convenient. You can make changes to your contact information. You can pay via credit and debit card. So you'll log into the portal, you'll find if your certificate is eligible to be renewed, it will show under the renewal screen, and you can renew it there. If you're moving up a level, you cannot renew online because I need to review your information. So if you're moving up a level, or if you just want to send your application, your renewal materials to me through the mail, you can. I'll make changes based on your application, and then you can pay via check or money order. You do not send in your LEUs. And I know we've hit an hour here. I will just say very briefly that instead of sending in your LEUs, what happens when you renew a 5-year certificate is that everyone who has renewed in the previous quarter is added to an audit pool. They're all of those people are thrown in the pool, and we will select out, the computer does this, not me. We select out 10% of those renewals for an audit. If you are selected for a random audit, you will receive an email notice from us. And at that point, you will have 60 days to send in your LEU certificates and prove that you earned the required number of LEUs for you to be eligible to have renewed your certificate. Wow, a lot of information. I had a few more slides about certificate or audits. But at this point, I just want to let you know that I'm here to help you. If you have questions, and we can take a few here off past the hour here, but please reach out to me. Give me a call, send me an email. I will get back to you. I want to help you be successful with this program and maintain your certificates and stay in good standing. So I'm here to help. And I really appreciate your time today. I know this is a lot of information to throw at you, but I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you wanting to learn about it, and I wish you a lot of success. Lisa, I'll let you go ahead and stop the recording today, and then I'll stay on the line a little bit, I think. And if you have questions,